railway, the giving and receiving of messages, whether by phone or radio, can have fateful consequences should any misunderstanding creep in. The principles of good communication apply to all grades throughout the industry. But in this short programme, we'll look at a particularly critical area: communication between the driver and the signaller. Let's start by looking at the different but entirely complementary roles played by driver and signaller in the day-to-day operation of the railway. Although these two groups of people have always communicated at a front-line level, they have historically had little understanding of the difficulties and frustrations of each other's jobs. We've all experienced the culture of blame and intolerance that has often existed between these two grades in the past. Drivers blame signallers for causing unnecessary delays. Signallers blame drivers for a lack of appreciation of the demands of traffic. Sounds familiar?
You often get stopped as drivers for no apparent reason that you know. And it can be frustrating when it happens on a journey several times, and by the time you say we'll get to Cardiff, get to say Newport in fact, and you'll be stopped again and you can see no movements taking place and you have no idea. And when you ask the signal, say I'm stood at whatever, November 224, and so say, okay, yeah, just wait my aspect drive. And that's all you'll get. Now I understand that he's got a job to do in the box, and I understand, but very often it would be just nice of them to say, sorry driver, we had a movement in the yard and we had to wait for it, just to obey my signal.
Sorry driver, I forgot to clear the road up then for the last.
Hey.
Arriva Trains Wales and Network Rail have set up a series of joint industry communications workshops, designed not only to improve the standards of oral communication, but to enhance mutual understanding of each other's roles, by bringing drivers and signallers together to share their experiences. The workshop includes a visit to a panel box, and for some drivers, this is their first opportunity to visit a busy signalling centre.
Moving along the track circuits at the moment, as you can see, is one Bravo 25. That would actually knock that signal back,
Put him back to
and
danger.
give you a change of aspect if you were on the down.
That's interesting.
Okay.
Ah.
So you're actually seeing the detection kicking on the points. There's nothing unsafe with that.
No.
But it can cause operational problems.
So let's consider some of the basic requirements of effective communication, starting with brevity. Messages should be succinct and brief. Don't overburden your message with details that aren't necessary. The guy on the other end doesn't need to know what you had for breakfast. Adding superfluous detail only confuses the message and causes misunderstanding. Messages should be absolutely accurate. Both parties should state clearly who they are, where they are, and what actions are necessary. The use of the phonetic alphabet is an absolute must. If you don't know it, learn it. Discipline is essential. Repeat back any instructions you're given to ensure that you have completely understood what you've been told. If on the radio, use the keyword over when you finish speaking and are awaiting a reply. Use the word out when ending the communication. Don't say over and out, it's meaningless. In our pilot workshop, we asked a driver and a signaller to do a telephone exercise. Here's how it went.
Hello, Elm Signal Box.
Hello, Elm Signal Box. This is the driver of 2 Lima 09, standard Echo 16 over.
Hello, Drive. I tell you what it is. We've had a farmer use a crossing at Smith's Crossing, which is the crossing ahead of you, and he hasn't phoned back.
Okay.
So what I want you to do is, I want you to pass, well, I'll give you the signal, Echo Mike 16, but I want you to proceed with caution over the crossing and report back to me.
Okay, proceed with caution up the Smith's Crossing. Check to make sure the crossing's clear, and then report back to you afterwards.
Yeah, report back to me the next signal, which is Echo Mike 18. Over.
Okay, I'll report back to you before I reach Echo Mike 18. Over.
Right, thank you for that. Drive out.
Okay, driver out.
There's no doubt that communication skills have greatly improved in recent years. The universal adoption of the phonetic alphabet is a shining example, but we still have room for improvement. In its long 180-year history, the railway industry has developed a linguistic subculture all its own. Think of all the words and terms we use at work which are completely unknown in the outside world. However, in safety-critical communications, this jargon can cause confusion and misunderstanding, especially where there are wide regional variations. For example, A ground-mounted position light signal might be referred to as a dolly, a dummy, or a dod, depending on where you are and who you're speaking to. Don't use this sort of jargon when communicating by phone or radio. It has obvious potential for misunderstanding.
It's the clear understanding you want, you know.
I think in regards to that, if you go up to say to crew and they call it a dolly, yeah, and you were to use that term on a South Wales region, it would be wrong to do that. So that's a scenario where a colloquial term is not to be used.
No.
Another potential problem is familiarity, either with the person you're speaking to or with the local infrastructure. Over-familiarity can get in the way of a clear understanding and can easily lead to the next and maybe the greatest danger, assumption.
Can I just say where you said Bobby earlier on when you were speaking to the signalman? There was a case in Cardiff where he called in Bobby and he was talking to the signalman in a different signal box to the one which he was supposed to be talking to. He was speaking to the signal box in Bargoed when it should have been in Bali.
Oh, yeah, I've known about that incident.
Yeah, and then because he didn't tell him where he was, he got the signal boxes mixed up, then an incident happened from it, like, you know.
If we think we know who we're speaking to, or we think we know what they're going to tell us, we're already making dangerous assumptions. Faulty equipment is another enemy of good communications. The bad telephone line, the radio signal that breaks up during transmission, the signal post telephone that doesn't work.
I mean, the NRN radio system is appalling anyway, in my opinion. It's a really, really sloppy system.
It is,
Yeah.
it is, yeah.
I was coming on to that, Dean, to say that so far we've spoken about examples of poor communication, perhaps driver or signaller, but then you've got the equipment side of it, and a lot of the equipment we work with for this day and age is not of an acceptable standard, really.
It's just not good enough.
No.
Simple as that.
I don't think
As soon
anybody
as
would
replace the
disagree.
ground hand.
Well, the NRN system is going to be replaced as you.
There was a recent incident in the Severn Tunnel where the driver, unfortunately, this train failed in the tunnel and he was unable to get communications on the NRN or on the SPTs, the line side emergency phones. In fact, I don't think any phone was working in the tunnel when he failed. And that could have been a fire on the train, it could have been a derailment, it could have been anything, obviously, but those phones weren't working, and apparently I've been told that the phones weren't maintained to the correct standards, and that is worrying as a driver, thinking that you're going through an area where communication is vital. So maybe the infrastructure itself, the way it's managed, needs to be looked at as well.
If it isn't working properly, use an alternative medium and report the fault. Don't make assumptions, and don't leave the problem for your mates to sort out. Without doubt, the most critical area of driver-signaller communication is the authority to pass a signal at danger. Here, any misunderstanding can have catastrophic consequences.
If you were to pass the message, I want you to pass Papa Tango 8 at danger and obey all other aspects. Yeah, and then at so-and-so crossing, could you stop and contact? By time you've thought all that through, you think, I'm going to need to write this down. You may have already, I may have repeated it back to you already, but it may not have gone in. Exactly. And so I think that it might be worth looking at, advising drivers to carry small notebooks purely for contact with signaller. We'd have to make another.
I understand. I don't know what your experience is of perhaps driving up on the north and west line where the manual box is, but I understand up there that a lot of the signallers, if they, for example, are stopping a driver at the box to caution for farm gate crossing gates left open, it could be quite some miles out into the section. They generally tend to give the drivers a written note up there.
Which is great.
I think that's great.
That's been happening in the Shrewsbury area as well.
Yeah.
The driver gets a note, which is obviously another reminder for him.
I mean, that takes out a huge.
But you can only do that when the signaller's got face-to-face contact with the driver. With a panel box, that's not a practical option, obviously. But
we don't see drivers.
I think that's very good practice on manual box areas.
Signallers will sometimes refer to block or signalling regulations when passing messages to drivers. Now, while many of the older and more experienced drivers have picked up knowledge of these regulations over the years, don't forget that drivers are not taught these regulations.
Yeah. The signal actually corrected by saying, I want you to examine the line, but if the signal would have just said, I want you to use Reg 9, Would drivers actually know that? I know you didn't do that.
Yeah.
It was cleared up with that. But
I mean, of course, we're used to, under Section D of the old rule book. So that was, what's this? Oh, must be something new. Better be quiet about that, just in case he thinks I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But saying it clearly, examine the line.
yeah,
is much better.
That's how it was, because some signallers will quote rule numbers. You say.
We left that in delivery.
And that was left. That was left in delivery.
It was put in delivery to see if the drivers would query it or not. Now, as we go on with these sessions, we may well have perhaps slightly less experienced drivers who will actually query what you're talking about Regulation 9. But to a signalman, that's quite a natural thing to perhaps say. So it can actually cause misunderstanding. So it needs to be there.
It's always plain and simple,
Yeah.
I don't know if any regulations used on the valleys ever since I've been driving on.
Right.
If as a driver you're given any message that refers to a block regulation by number or letter and you're not completely sure of the meaning, ask the signaller to explain. Some drivers are reluctant to ask the signaller for this kind of information, fearing it'll make them look bad or undermine their professionalism. Don't forget that signallers are in the same business as you are, running a safe and efficient railway. So if you're not entirely sure, don't be afraid to ask.
So once I was going down, I hadn't been down there for nearly 2 years, so I phoned the signalman. I said, could you just talk me through the signals again? Would you take me down to the brickyard? You're the qualified driver, why should I tell you about that?
It's totally out of order.
That's all I'm asking for, is for you to just talk me through. And he was quite flippant.
Can I just say on that point, Wayne, part of the signaller's current 30-week briefing process at the moment is the fact that drivers who are routed on perhaps unfamiliar moves on ground position lights will be phoning up and asking the signaller to advise them which route they're taking and where they're going. The feedback, certainly from Cardiff panel, is that they're quite happy for that to be done. I can't say that every signaller would be happy, obviously.
So, they might have changed it.
A lot of younger drivers are afraid to contact signallers when they want to do an unfamiliar shunt for the sake of being ridiculed. If we had to learn every single shunt in every single station that we go to, at every single siding depot or whatever, we would take years to learn one route.
Well, I tell you what, you wouldn't have that problem at Portel panel.
No.
Well, you wouldn't have that problem because everybody's quite willing to help any driver.
I think it makes the job more interesting for you. If you're telling a driver, like, you need to go behind Papa Tango, whatever, and it's great. And even if it's signal to signal, isn't that much better than having a span?
I'd rather a driver know what he's doing rather than a driver think he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Oh God,
yeah.
Just think if it's your.
That's why you actually say, do you understand that? And if you don't understand that, now's the time to say.
Everybody agreed that the pilot workshop was a great success, both in terms of mutual understanding of the driver and signaller roles and in terms of improving oral communication skills. The actual exercises were recorded for analysis by the participants, just as calls from SPTs and radio are recorded in the larger panel boxes and computerised signalling centres.
This is the voice recorder equipment that takes all phone messages into and out of port over panel. You see there's 2 tape masters which are indicated up on here. D1 is currently recording, shows the tape is 27% full at the moment, and D2 is on standby ready to take over when that tape fills up. In addition to that, it has a hard drive as well. Basically, what we can do, as you can see on here, we can pick any date at any time and pull out any voice recording that's come into the panel. So if we know a driver has been involved in, for example, an incident at 9:30 this morning, and we know he phoned in from signal Papa Tango 8, we can go straight to that voice recording and listen to it. Very, very useful and versatile piece of equipment.
We hope that this programme has helped your appreciation of some of the key issues of good communications, as well as an understanding of the signaller's role. It's hoped that every Arriva Trains Wales driver will have the opportunity of attending a joint communications workshop in the near future. In the meantime, if you have any queries or suggestions concerning this programme, get in touch with your manager or trainer.
Back to what I just said earlier, it's clear understanding. As long as the understanding between the two parties is clear, then there's a clear understanding.